Mayor Mark Sheldon is pushing for a $10 million pedestrian bridge to connect Frank Brown Park to Aaron Besant Park. It's great for music festivals. It's the city's number one priority this year. They've got a bunch of projects, and they plan to spend $236 million. 2 years ago, the budget for the city was only $42 million. That's why locals are paying so much more in assessments to the city. Mayor Sheldon says it's worth it. After all, he owns Gulf Coast Jam. The city's number one priority will benefit his music festivals. He wants more state and federal grant money as a slush fund.
These are significant projects that will make a huge difference in our community. The first is to pursue any available state aid for the planning, design, and environmental studies related to a pedestrian bridge connecting Aaron Besant Park and Frank Brown Park. This walkover would link these two public parks and provide a safer avenue for our residents.
Yeah, sure. How am I talking and my mouth isn't even moving? Whoever's pushing the buttons tonight is going to get fired. This is a really serious show, actually. But the guy pushing the buttons isn't going to get fired. You're going to see the video of opening arguments, the entire opening arguments, in the trial of attorney Hoot Crawford. What you're going to see tonight and throughout is going to blow your mind. I want you to remember what you're going to see State Attorney's Office, Larry Bassford, the top prosecutor. You're going to see the prosecutor, in this case, Sullivan, is the one talking to the jury. You're going to hear him say, we have proof that Hoot Crawford is guilty of tampering with a witness victim, and the evidence they're going to present to the jury is their attorney-client privileged conversations. And tomorrow, you will see, it's already queued up, ready to go, you will see Judge Kelvin C. Wells issue a ruling that the state is allowed, the prosecutors are allowed to present attorney-client privilege. He even says it is privileged. It's privileged what Hoot Crawford told the girl, his client, and what his client told him. It's privileged under attorney-client privilege, but there's an exception carved out, he said. And I'm going to read it to you because Larry Bassford, and they filed it. The sheriff's office never even charged attorney Hoot Crawford with tampering with a witness victim, telling her what she can tell the law enforcement and just advising his client. I don't even know how to say it. And they used their communication as evidence. Here's what the judge said for you legal types. He said, yes, it's privileged, but there's an exception. There is a hearsay exception. So the judge allowed Sheriff Tommy Ford's investigators to testify what they heard. And when the girl was forced to talk to them without an attorney. When DCF and the Bay County Sheriff's Office took custody of the girl under a false affidavit that the judge said could not be scrutinized in front of the jury. The jury had to believe that the girl was in imminent danger at the Children's Advocacy Center with the law enforcement officers, with her attorney, and with her loving parents. The judge said, no, we're not going to get into the legality of the shelter. The entire case was on whether or not the girl was, whether or not they had the lawful authority to shelter her like that, to take her away, and they didn't. So here it is. This is the rule that the judge said, yeah, we can use attorney-client privilege. 90.804 subsection 2. 90.804 subsection 2. The judge said there was a hearsay exception that was allowed them to intrude into attorney-client privilege. Comments that the girl made without an attorney, because Sheriff Ford arrested the attorney, and then State Attorney Larry Bassford filed the charge for tampering with a witness. And Judge Wells said, yeah, go ahead. You're going to see Judge Wells. You're going to see that while opening arguments are going on, Judge Kelvin C. Wells can't stay off his cell phone. He's texting. I would love to know what Judge Kelvin C. Wells, you'll see, who is he texting, who's texting him, and what kind of conversations is he having while he's presiding over opening arguments and throughout the entire trial of Hoot Crawford in a case like this. Yeah. So again, yes, it's attorney-client privilege. Yes, the state can use it to convict the attorney because of Rule 90, is it a rule or a statute? 90.804 subsection 2. The hearsay clause, the hearsay exception. Yeah. All right. So we're going to watch the entire opening arguments of the prosecutor and of the defense. I do need to tell you this because this is getting hot. Mexico Beach. Holy Nikes, Mexico Beach is getting hot. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, there's a recall effort underway against Mayor Miller. You know that, right? There is a petition online, change.org. Now, the recall people, all the people trying to cover up the corruption in Mexico Beach, now they want you to sign a petition demanding that Governor Ron DeSantis remove Michelle Miller as mayor of Mexico Beach. Anybody who puts their name on that fraudulent petition and those fraudulent claims is nuts. Let me tell you what's going down over there. Let me do it this way so that I can do it faster. So this is what you can read this. It's right below this post. Look at this fraudulent petition. People are crazy to sign it. Mayor Michelle Miller has filed a lawsuit again, not the first law, a second lawsuit against the recall committee for its bogus accusations against her. And they're begging Governor Ron DeSantis to save them. But now the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee and the Auditor General are examining the $100 million of FEMA money that was awarded after Hurricane Michael. Now, the person who would know most about it is Doug Baber, the former city administrator who abruptly resigned last year and became the city manager in Crystal River. Okay, remember? And then his underling went down there. Well, they both just abruptly resigned from there. I think they were interviewed, questioned by the senators and representatives, from the auditing committee or the auditor general. And he had to resign. There was a whole revolt against him. By the way, I got to tell you this. I only told one person this because I forgot about it. I had the craziest dream last night. I had a dream that I was in Crystal River and my best friend was Muhammad Ali. I think about him every single day. I don't know why, but I do. I love him. And not just because he was a great boxer and talked a lot of cement. None of that, because he was a sweet, sweet, sweet man. And the whole thing was a gag, and it's an unbelievable story. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. It's like, damn. I should have came to Crystal River. I didn't know, man. And he was like 30. Like, it was unbelievable. But I kept thinking, why the hell am I in Crystal River? Isn't this where Baber is? I had that dream last night. Weird stuff, man. All right, so this is, yeah, Baber and Michael Manning went down there. There was a complete revolt against him. Over alleged bid rigging since he's been down there, and budget manipulation similar to what they did in Mexico Beach. Mayor Miller still has been prevented from overseeing the city's finances, which are now being guarded by putative city administrator Chris Hubbard and his girlfriend, accountant Debbie McLeod. It's a hot time in Mexico Beach. Now, the city paid former Mayor Al Cathy's Ace Hardware more than $500,000 while he was in office. He was the mayor and a big vendor at the same time. Sheriff Tommy Ford and his public trust unit made big televised promises that they would clean up public corruption. You remember that? With the help of the FBI. They raided GAC contractors, took all those boxes, all that treasure trove of evidence. When they told the judge that Bay County is more corrupt than New Orleans and New Jersey, they took all of the evidence and they put corruption in boxes. Sheriff Ford and the FBI went in there and got it and then sat on it. That's what Judge Federal Mark Walker, how he described it. Put corruption in boxes. I didn't know the FBI did that. But it's becoming too hard in Mexico Beach now to keep the corruption hidden, with state representatives and state senators from the auditing committee doing a deep dive into the FEMA cookie jar. They ought to really take a good look at who got the lion's share of the $49 million in hurricane debris pickup. Start there. Look at those contracts. Look at those companies. Look at those invoices. The FBI really ought to look at hiring a special agent. Hire a special agent right now with a financial background and focus on Mexico Beach. I think that would be a really grand idea. Put a pin in that one. All right, so now, now's what you came here for. Somebody, oh man, you know who's going to get on my butt. People have been telling me, Bernie, you got to get into it faster. You know, you take too long. You talk about Muhammad Ali. See, right now I've lost 7 people. And you know what my answer was? Next time I'm probably going to take longer. If you don't want to hear it, you don't got to hear it. You got something better to do? But actually, the truth is, most of the people just wait till later, toggle it forward. Skip all the funny stuff. It's not funny, Bernie. All right. I'm going to thank 2 sponsors, and then we're going to get right into the video of the opening. Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. All right. Also, of course, speaking of cookie jars.
Hand caught in the cookie jar? Sometimes bad habits continue even into adulthood. I'm El Saline, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
All right, you're not going to believe what you're going to see right now. Now, I will tell you that what this is really about is not the wrongful, not only the wrongful prosecution of attorney Hoot Crawford, an innocent man. It's not even the 16-year-old girl at the time, 2 years ago, who was tormented by the Bay County Sheriff's Office that would not stop chasing her around, grabbing her, making her talk to them without her attorney, violating her attorney-client privilege, and threatening her mom over and over. Investigator Trey Fondren really, really wanted to get this girl alone and talk to her. The family was terrified of these people. It reminds me so much of that movie Cape Fear, where that creepy dude kept trying to get that girl, kept following him around, trying to haunt him. Every time she saw the Bay County Sheriff's Office, they'd take her. Yell at her mom, threaten her whole family, threaten her sisters and brothers. There's 7 kids in that family. Remember this too. This is really important. If you say, Bernie, you got to err on the side of caution when it comes to kids. I thought you wanted to be a protector. I thought you cared about protecting the most vulnerable. I do. Now, hear this. In the trial, and you're going to see it, not today, but you're going to see it. Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, when he was asked by defense attorney Don Pumphrey, were you afraid that the brother was going to hurt that girl, harm that girl? His answer was no. And when the Cape Fear villain, investigator Fondren, who kept chasing the girl around, when he lied to DCF and said he saw the brother who they say threatened to rape her, they said that. He called DCF, said, I just saw the guy who's threatening to rape the 16-year-old girl go into the home. So what did the sheriff's office do when they saw the guy who threatened to rape her go into the home? You know what they did? Nothing. They called DCF, open up the case again. I really want to get that girl alone. They lied and said that the brother went into the home, and then at the trial said the brother was not a threat. Okay. So the biggest casualty in this whole thing is that the sheriff's office, the state attorney, DCF, the prosecutor, and the judge, they all will not protect your constitutional right to an attorney. And then they might use what you and your attorney talked about as evidence to convict you or him. And they think they got away with it, but they didn't. No, this is way too big. But this is the craziest part of all. You see this? Do you know what this is? Gideon v. Wainwright. The whole right to an attorney was born in Panama City. Did you know that? The entire right to an attorney. You have a right to an attorney, even if you can't afford one. That whole thing came out of a 1963 9-0 Supreme Court case. This dude right here in 1962 was arrested in a Panama City pool hall he was charged with stealing $5 of change and a few beer bottles. He tried to represent himself, and he did a terrible job, and he was convicted. While he was in prison, while he was in state prison, he thought it was so wrong that he couldn't get an attorney because he didn't have money, that he appealed to the Florida Supreme Court. And the Florida Supreme Court said, yeah, you should have had more money. So he took a pencil and sat down in the prison and wrote a handwritten letter to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court said, that's interesting, let's take this. And a 9-0 decision allowed him to have a retrial. He had an attorney, and they won. And because of that landmark decision, the right to an attorney that was born here in Panama City, because of that, 1,500 inmates were set free. And another, gosh, I think it was close to 4,000 got retrials with an attorney this time. But that's from here. And look at this, the most ironic part of all. You know where I got this image? Where do you think I got that image? From right here, from the 14th Judicial Circuit. That is from the very court that denied the Marcy's victim her right to an attorney, that violated the right to a privileged conversation between your attorney and the attorney and the client. Indeed, used it as evidence to convict an attorney who was trying to protect his client before he was arrested, and she was brought back there and forced to do 4 interrogations, and the Cape Fear creep, he got his chance to be alone with her, and they never told her she had the right to an attorney. This is a relic of the past. This is a joke to the prosecutors. Look, Larry Bassford thinks this is funny. Sheriff Tommy Ford does not believe you have a right to an attorney. Now, they will lie under oath and say, oh, you always do, but they arrested him and did it anyway. You think that's going to stand? I mean, honestly.
This will not stand, you know? This aggression will not stand, man.
I don't think so either. I really don't. All right. Golly, man. You know what? Those guys are right. 21 minutes into it. This show sucks. Man, Tripp and all you guys you guys are right, man. I need to stop. I need to just listen to you and stop, saying I'll do what I want. Here we are. All right, let's get to prosecutors. This is the opening statement from the prosecutors. I'm going to tell you that this is a public record video. It's a public record video from the clerk of courts, from the Bay County Court. What you're going to see here, let me show you. What you're going to see here is a 4-paneled image video. I have covered up the jury. All right, I've taken more measures than the court has to protect identities. So you'll never see the jury in my video. And you will never, I did my very best. I hope I didn't miss any, but I have muted any mention of the 16-year-old at the time girl's name or initials, okay? So you won't hear her name or her initials. You don't need to. And I'm going to do my very best, since under one point of Marcy's law is that the law is designed to protect your dignity and your privacy and make sure you have all rights afforded to you. Bay County Sheriff's Office did the very opposite. They tormented and terrorized the family and the girl. Oh my God. Marcy's law was decimated by this court. Now, on the bottom right, on the top right, that's the prosecutor. I believe his name is Frank, isn't it? Sullivan. On the bottom right is Judge Kelvin C. Wells. Now, I want you to watch Judge Wells throughout this. The guy cannot stay off his cell phone texting people and getting texts. He's obviously paying no attention. If there's an objection, do you know what he does? He just asks the prosecutors, what do you want me to do again? Watch, tell me if you think he's paying attention. I'm not going to interrupt this, I don't think.
May 6, 2022, this defendant was told multiple times by an investigator at the Department of Children and Families that the young girl that he was representing was being sheltered and was in the custody of the state of Florida.
I want you to remember one thing. The judge said, sorry about this. The judge said that the defendant could not defend himself, right? Normally what happens is you get to say, wait a minute, the whole thing hinges on whether or not it was a lawful custody, whether the state followed the law, provided an honest probable cause affidavit by the DCF agent to the local judge. Because if it was not, if it was a false affidavit, the whole thing's over. But the judge said, we're not going to look at the legality of that. We're just going to, if he was told, if the attorney was told by a DCF agent he never met, then damn it, he's guilty. That's what you're going to see right now. Pay attention closely, because every word out of Sullivan's mouth, State Attorney Larry Bassford wants you to reelect him in August. Listen to his office say you don't have a right to an attorney, and your attorney-client privilege conversation can be used as evidence against you. Watch.
And despite being told that multiple times, he took that girl, put her in his car, and drove away. I want to back up a little bit, and I want to talk about what had led up to that day. I want to go back to the end of April 2022. And you're going to hear that this young girl, you'll hear myself, Mr. Pumphrey, and several witnesses, we're going to try to refer to her as her initials because she was a juvenile when this happened, but we may slip up. We may even say the juvenile of the child.
Again, I have done my very best to mute any reference, even though she's an adult now, any reference of her name or her initials. I've done my I hope I didn't miss any, but you know, let's all work together to protect her, since she's a target, evidently, of Sheriff Ford's office and the state attorney.
So we're talking all
Look at the judge.
So at the end of April 2022, she had a mental crisis. She, when she was younger, had been sexually abused by her brother up in Tennessee. This had happened 5, 6, 7 years prior. About a month or two prior to April, he had made some comment to her about, "I'm going to rape you," and that obviously didn't sit well with her. And then in April of 2022, he is getting ready to come down and visit the family in Florida, and she freaks out. She's scared.
Who is the judge texting? The guy's on his phone the whole time. Tell me if you think that Judge Kelvin C. Wells paid any attention at all to this case, or if he just did whatever the prosecutors told. Who the hell's I would, if it's a public record, to get the text messages and the conversations that Judge Wells is having, because he's not paying any attention to the trial.
She doesn't want to be around him. She doesn't want to be at home, and she has a mental crisis. This ultimately ends up with her meeting a deputy in the Bay County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Sarah Drexler, who met with her. He told Deputy Drexler what was going on, told her that she didn't feel safe at home, and was thinking about killing herself.
Oh, by the way, this,
Deputy Drexler was concerned for her safety.
Okay, this is what else he could not present. So Deputy Sarah Drexler was the first person that the 16-year-old girl, at a time of an emotional breakdown, said, "Yeah, my brother said this a long time ago. Now he's coming to visit. I'm worried about it." Again, so then she goes on to tell, this is like about an hour-long, thorough investigation with the sheriff's office, first encounter with the girl. The girl is hysterical. She evidently threatens to harm herself or kill herself, and so she is Baker acted. So far, I don't have a big problem with any of this, okay? That's all proper probably, but here's the problem. When you want to read the thorough first investigation from Deputy Sarah Drexler, you will never read it because there is no investigation report. What he's talking about, where did the report go? Did they destroy it? Why is there no, that's the biggest, longest in time that they questioned her. And there's no damn investigation report? And the judge said that Hoot's not allowed to tell the jury that.
Decided that she needed to be Baker acted.
Who's he
Deputy Dresser
texting?
got in touch with parents and told her, if you don't voluntarily commit her, I will be Baker acting her. And the parents did take her and committed her. Now, over the course of the next couple of days, law enforcement gets involved. They're trying to figure out what's going on here. They get these allegations. Is there any truth to these allegations? You know, is he safe at home? Are the parents adequately protecting at home?
Now, remember that in this trial, the top supervisor investigator at the sheriff's office in this case, the guy yelling at Hoot in the video, Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, when asked, were you afraid the brother was a threat to her under oath? He said no. The prosecutors are telling the jury that she's in danger and then later testified that she was not. Do you hear me?
So law enforcement attempts to contact parents several times and essentially don't get anywhere. They don't get any phone calls back. Eventually law enforcement goes out in person and is told, talk to my attorney, I don't want anything to do with you. And law enforcement leaves.
By the way, the reason she said the reason mom, I gotta just fill this in for you. The reason mom said talk with my attorney who she got, Hoot Crawford, is because remember the first encounter when the girl was Baker acted? I don't have a problem with that because if she was saying I'm going to kill myself, I get it. I get that that's the law and they followed the law. There's no investigation report, but that's another issue. So 3 days later, the psychologist releases her and says, okay, she's good to go home. The moment she goes home, the sheriff's office is banging on the door. She just got out of a mental care institution, and they're banging on the door. And investigator Fondren, again, the Cape Fear dude, he's screaming at the. By the way, mom is very pretty blonde lady, and Fondren has to just keep bothering them, chasing them around. And he's screaming. There's 6 kids in the home. Little kids, too. In fact, she was pregnant at the time. And investigator Fondren, who's just looking out for her best interest, is screaming at mom, you're a bad mom. I'm going to take all the kids and arrest you if I can't talk to the 16-year-old girl. She grabs her phone, starts to record him. He bails. And then later lies to DCF and says, I saw the brother go in the house. What'd you do about it, Trey Fondren? Nothing. Did you run a report? Did you knock on the door? Did you try to save her from this threat? Nothing. All he did was use that lie to call DCF so that he can open another investigation so he could finally get that girl alone. They never thought she was in danger. So if you're thinking we really got to err on the side of saving kids, remember, they never thought she was in danger. They just wanted to get that girl alone. With no female deputy, by the way. Trey Fondren, investigator, and Jake Roberts, when they snatched her away and never told her she had a right to an attorney and threw her in the interrogation room, they had 4 different interrogations, 4 separate ones. Those 2 guys had to go in there and talk to her about things she didn't want to talk about because they ripped her attorney away. And there was never a female deputy in the room with them.
Eventually, a CPT, a child protection team interview, is scheduled between the attorney and the Department of Children and Families. And that is scheduled to occur on May 6, 2022. So everyone comes down to the Children's Advocacy Center, the CAC.
Okay, this place has a big giant sign on it that says safe place. It was an ambush hall. They said it was a voluntary interview. And Sheriff Tommy Ford ambushed this girl who showed up with her loving parents and her attorney, her grandfatherly protector, Hoot Crawford, and they ambushed her. And they took her away again and made her do 4 interviews without an attorney. And then used what she talked about with her attorney as evidence that her attorney tampered with a witness. Your attorney's supposed to advise you on what to say and what not to say. How do these people sit up here and do this? Think about the amount of time that Sheriff Ford and State Attorney Bassford spend prosecuting good people. Margo Anderson, James Finch, Hoot Crawford. While real bad people get away with impunity.
And the plan is to interview, find out about these disclosures about her brother, find out is she safe at home or not. That is the goal. Protect this girl and find out is she safe. And get her any services, any therapy, any counseling that she needs so she doesn't ultimately kill herself like she's been threatened. Now, you'll hear that Mr. Crawford was hired to represent me, and he's present. And the discussion...
I want to point out one thing. Did you see how he did that? We're just trying to get her the help and therapy she needs so she doesn't kill herself like she said she was going to do. The voluntary interview where they ambushed her, it was like bait. And by the way, the big safe place sign that's in the Children's Advocacy Center, big giant sign says safe place. That sign is as true as that false affidavit. It was not a safe place. It's a scary effing place where your attorneys are ripped from you. And they bring you back into that interrogation room over and over and over and over 4 times. But I want you to understand, this guy is telling the jury that they just want to make sure that she's mentally okay and she is not going to hurt herself. A doctor, the doctor evaluated her after they Baker Act her and determined she was safe to be home. So what do? They go banging on the door, chasing her around again. It was already determined, Sullivan, by the doctor. The only thing she's scared about is you guys. And rightfully so.
The question first revolves around how this interview is going to take place. And the rules for these types of interviews do not allow...
Listen to what State Attorney Larry Bassford is saying with his guy here. Meanwhile, the judge is texting away again. The rules at the nonprofit Children's Advocacy Center, that incidentally, the same year, 2022, the nonprofit Children's Advocacy Center that the state attorney, the sheriff, and Lieutenant Mathis are all on the board of directors of, that place, that scary place, they got $6 million of federal funding from the Criminal Violence Act, Prevent Violence Act. In 2022, the Children's Advocacy Center got $6 million to protect victims, kind of like Marcy's Law. But all the sheriff did and the state attorney did was hurt the victim, strip her of her attorney. And now, listen what he's saying. Listen to this.
And the discussion first revolves around how this interview is going to take place.
Okay, so they're claiming, the state attorney's office and the sheriff and DCF and the judge, they all say, the judge who's never paying attention, they all say that the protocol, that the way it works in here, remember now, the way it works in here is you don't get your attorney in here. The attorney's not allowed to come in here, even though Panama City is the birthplace of the right to an attorney. This comes from that very court, the 14th Judicial Circuit. Everybody has a right to an attorney. Because of this case, no one is charged with a crime. Anyone charged with a crime is entitled to a lawyer, even if they can't afford to pay one. Well, do you know that Marcy's Law says that victims of sexual crimes, and by the way, this girl as the sheriff's office themselves finally came around and said, they weren't afraid that the boy was going to hurt her. One reason, according to the evidence in the case, that was having some emotional hard times, like a lot of 16-year-old girls do, is her biological father, her estranged biological father, hurt her. So she is a victim. But don't jump to the conclusion that it's her brother. She denied that. She went back and forth on it. And the sheriff's office eventually said he was not a threat. Okay? But she is entitled to a lawyer every step of the way. The 14th Judicial Circuit is full of shit. They don't believe that for a second. They just like to stand on it and say, elect me. We're the birthplace of the right to an attorney, as they do this. So they're going to say it's against the rules. Rules are rules. You can't have your attorney in the Safe Place Children's Advocacy Center. That's one place we don't let attorneys. She said, well, I don't want to do it without Mr. Hoot. I don't want to talk to Mr. Mean, scary guy who yells at my mom, keeps chasing us around, without my protector, without my lawyer. Well, that's against the rules. Sheriff Ford, State Attorney Bassford, and this judge claimed that the protocol, it comes from the Department of Health. Is it Department of Health directive, huh? Hey, Sullivan, let's see how well you know your law and Constitution. Does that supersede the Florida Constitution, where Marcy's law was amended into the Constitution? Sullivan will say, Bernie, that's not law. Law is whatever you can get by the judge, okay? You're just talking utopia stuff. Boy, these people are something, man.
And the rules for these types of interviews do not allow other people to be present in the interview other than the interviewer and the child being interviewed. And these rules were explained to Mr. Crawford,
to the attorney,
the defendant, and he refused to leave his side. He insisted on being in the room with
this client.
And it was explained to him that that's not how this is done. It can't be done that way. He can watch through a glass window and watch it, but he cannot be in the room with her.
Larry Bassford
And that's
did
not a Bay County Sheriff's Office rule. That's not a Children's Advocacy Center rule. That is a Florida Department of Health regulation.
Oh, wow. Florida,
it's out of their hands.
So Larry Bassford, state attorney, Florida, says that the Florida Department of Education supersedes the Florida Constitution. These guys want you to vote for him. Bassford's up for re-election. So is Sheriff Ford in August. How does this guy stand here and say these things? It's out of their hands. The Department of Health said they got to do it. The right to an attorney be damned.
He can watch through a glass window and watch it, but he cannot be in the room with her. And that's not a Bay County Sheriff's Office rule. That's not a Children's Advocacy Center rule. That is a Florida Department of Health regulation. It's out of their hands. They explained that to
the attorney,
Mr. Crawford, and ultimately they decided we can't do this interview if you're going to insist on being present in the room.
Right to an attorney.
Which is fine. They don't do the interview. The staff from the Children's Advocacy Center, Victoria Hamilton and Brett Patrick, tell the lead investigator, Trey Fondren, from the Bay County Sheriff's Office,
the Cape Fear guy,
we're not going to be able to do this interview because Mr. Crawford won't let us do it the way we need to do it. Investigator Fondren says, okay, that's fine. She's old enough. This isn't a 5 or 6 year old or an 8-year-old where we need the specialized.
Notice that, again, the Cape Fear guy, the guy chasing this girl around all the time, he says, look, if the only way I can talk to her is that you're gonna linger around like some kind of chaperone, then hell, okay, I just really want to talk to her.
Team to
look at the judge.
Interview. She's old enough. I will ask her some questions myself, and Mr. Crawford can be present. That's fine.
Oh, thank you. Geez, thanks, Sullivan.
So he sits down with the two of them and attempts to ask questions about what's going on. And you'll hear that during this entire time, and even before Investigator Fondren got involved, that the defendant kept talking over, would not let answer any questions, would not let her talk, kept talking over her, and repeatedly kept trying to get her to tell the investigators that she made these allegations up, that it never happened.
Do you know why he's saying that? Because there is attorney-client privilege conversation taken out of context in a small window under duress while they're being chased by the Cape Fear guy and the sheriff's office, but then I repeat myself. And they use the attorney-client privilege to convict the attorney while stripping the girl of her right to an attorney. And this guy stands up there and says this while the judge is texting or sleeping. How does this not terrify everybody?
That she fabricated these allegations, that she hallucinated them. And the investigator is just trying to get her to say, what's going on? Do you want to cooperate?
That's all he's trying to do. Remember, they say in this trial that the brother was not a threat. What are they doing here?
Do you want to give this interview or not? He's trying to find out what's going on, whether she's safe. Eventually, he's got some concerns, so he calls his supervisor, Jeremy Mathis, who comes into the CAC.
The big
Jeremy
guns.
Mathis arrives, and he kind of pulls Mr. Crawford.
So now they've called in the big guns. Lieutenant Mathis, who is on the board of directors of the Children's Advocacy Center, along with Sheriff Ford and the top prosecutor, Larry Bassford.
Side to figure out what's going on. Why are you interfering with this investigation? Why won't you let us talk to her? We're trying to see what's going on with this child molestation allegation. Ultimately, there's a little argument between Mr. Crawford and Lieutenant Mathis, and Lieutenant Mathis says, I'm going to talk to DCF and see if we have to shelter this child. So he calls the supervisor from the Department of Children and Families, Bo Whitfield, who you will also hear from, and basically lays out what they're dealing with, what they've got. And the supervisor at the Department of Children and Families makes the determination, shelter that child. You'll hear that he says, where's my CPI, my child protective investigator? And at this time, he's referring to a woman by the name of Christine Rebels. She's present, and he tells her, shelter the child, take her into state's custody. By this point, Mr. Crawford and the girl have left the CAC and walked out to the parking lot and are getting in Mr. Crawford's car to leave. You'll hear from Christine Rebels, and you'll hear from Jessica Russo, who was...
Christine Rebels is the DCF agent Hoot Crawford had never seen, that went out there and said, I'm taking her now. She's sheltered. And then she pretended she got run over by his car, which they never mention now. But for a year and a half, they kept saying that Hoot Crawford ran her over, bumped into her, struck her with the vehicle, injured her so bad that the woman, the DCF agent they're talking about, she went on work comp for 5 months. And the sheriff's office and DCF aided and abetted that workers' comp claim. The sheriff's office got the medical papers when she went to the emergency room 3 days later so that they could say she had to go on workers' comp for 5 months. She quit, by the way. Went on a little vacation. Yeah, they leave all that. Hoot's not allowed to tell any of the story. It comes down to, did she tell you or not, Hoot? She told you time and time again, but you chose to represent your client anyway.
Was new to DCF. It was either her first day on the job, her first week on the job.
That's the lady who was running.
She's shadowing Christine Rebels. She's kind of walking around, listening, taking it all in. You'll hear from both of them that they walked out to the car where Mr. Crawford and are, and Ms. Rebels told him, we are sheltering her. And at that point, everything's okay. Mr. Crawford says, okay, when's the shelter hearing going to be? They discuss it'll probably be the next day, try to get the soonest one possible. And they agree that Mr. Crawford will go with the girl and DCF to the DCF office. Ms. Rebels has to go back into the CAC to grab her bag that she forgot. She comes out. They all go to get in Ms. Rebels' car, and they all go to the DCF office. At this point, the supervisors from DCF, Bo Whitfield, Carol Spence, who you'll hear from both of them, call Ms. Rebels and say, no, don't go to the DCF office, stay there, we're on our way there. So Ms. Rebels tells Mr. Crawford, there's a change of plans, we're staying here. And at that point, the defendant says, nope, I'm done, and his attitude completely changes. He said, we're done, we're going, she's coming with me, we're going to my office, leave us alone. Get us, when you get a court order, you can come get her. And you'll hear, because the defendant was kind enough to record all of this for us, you'll hear 3 times distinctly as he's trying to walk away with this girl, the investigator says she is in state custody. Now you'll hear from Bo Whitfield, he'll explain the shelter process and what DCF, how DCF goes about sheltering someone. And that process is that it's a verbal, you are in state custody, this child is sheltered. And at that point, that child is in the custody of the state of Florida. We talked this morning about proper procedures in the courts. There's a proper procedure. Once a DCF does that, they have 24 hours to seek a court order. They don't have to have a court order when they shelter a child. They've got 24 hours to go before a judge, present their evidence, and have a court order presented. The defendant doesn't care. He says, when you get that court order, then you can come get her. And he's told multiple times, she is in state custody. You cannot leave with her.
Look, the judge has got a text. Look.
He drives away.
He's going to be texting for the next minute and a half.
Investigators, Ms. Russo, runs in to tell law enforcement, Jeremy Mathis, hey, he's leaving with her. They get in, they chase him down, do a traffic stop, and pull him over. He stops, and after about an hour and a half of sitting there, he finally...
So, see, the judge just texts all day. He's just on his phone or the computer. Oh, my God. Wait till you see later what he does with his computer. So he's texting all day. And then when there's an objection, he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He just always asks the prosecutor, what do I do?
Lets the girl out of the car, and she's taken back into state custody again. Ladies and gentlemen, after you've heard all the evidence in this case, the judge will give you the law. And what I expect him
He's
to tell
texting
you
right now,
is
though.
that
He's
to
busy
prove
now.
the first count, interference with child custody, the state will have to prove 3 things, essentially. One, that the defendant, without lawful authority, did take...
So this is important. This is why the jury had to convict Hoot Crawford, because the only 3 things the jury had to... The only requirements were, 1, that they left, 2, that the girl was under 18, and 3, that he heard the DCF agent tell him. Judge Kelvin C. Wells said, we're not going to consider the false affidavit. We're not going to consider the DCF agent's credibility who claimed to get hit by a car and go on 5 months of disability. We're not going to look into probable cause. We're not going to look into investigator Trey Fondren, who lied and said that the brother walked into the house with her, and it was such a threat, he did absolutely nothing except reopen the DCF investigation so he could finally get to the 16-year-old girl again, and everything else. None of that was to be considered. The only thing is, if you think the attorney had been told by an unknown he'd never met this DCF agent, that's enough to convict the attorney and make sure that girl never got representation. She would then be taken back to the Safe Place Children's Advocacy Center interrogation room and interrogated 4 separate times without an attorney.
3 things, essentially. 1, that the defendant, without lawful authority, did take or entice. 2, at the time that this happened, was less than 18 years of age, and you'll hear she was 16 at the time. And 3, that at the time
the
that
judge is texting,
she was in the lawful charge of a public agency, specifically in this case the Department of Children and Families. And at that time, I'll come back before you, and I'll ask you to find him guilty of count 1, interference with child custody. Now, as to count 2, the defendant is charged with tampering with a witness or victim. And the judge will give you the law on that as well. But what I expect is you'll hear the evidence that he tried to get he tried to get her to tell law enforcement that she made this up. And what you'll hear is she never told him. She never told him she made this up. Yet he tried to get her to testify untruthfully or to not provide information to law enforcement during this investigation. And at that point, again, I'll come before you after you've heard the evidence, and I'll ask you to find the defendant guilty.
Hey, Judge,
of
can
that
you stop
tampering
texting
with the
for a
victim or
moment?
witness as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Hey, that's the case, by the way. If you want to look it up, that's the
During this
style.
investigation.
That's what it's
And
called.
at
That's
that
the
point,
style.
again, I'll come before you after you've heard the
Listen
evidence.
to the judge.
And I'll ask you to find the defendant guilty of that count, tampering with the victim or witness as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
He says, "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan," without even stopping his text. Watch his thumb. He's still texting. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. He's texting while he says, "Thank you, Mr. Sullivan."
Guilty of that count, tampering with
Look
the
at him.
victim or witness
Watch.
as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Is that amazing? So there's the style. State of Florida plaintiff versus Billy Joe Crawford defendant. Now you can go look up everything. If you go to the Bay County Clerk of Court and you type in Crawford, space Billy, you got to kind of poke around. A whole bunch of stuff will come up, but then you'll be able to find it. All right. Now I'm going to play the defense attorney, and I won't interrupt him. I really won't. So much unbelievable garbage. I mean, you're seeing it, so, Let me thank a couple sponsors, and we'll go right to the defense attorney, and I'll let it roll.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan can make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at pcairrepair.com. All right, let's get to the defense attorney. This is the tremendous. I didn't know he was so well respected around here, but he's a tremendous defense attorney. His name is Don Pumphrey, and his absolute defense was stripped right before he went up there. You're not allowed to question the basis upon which the child was sheltered. So good luck, dude. Pretty much what the judge said. And here's Don Humphreys, the defense attorney.
State is correct. We'll hear the Department of Children and Families telling Mr. Crawford and the young lady that he was trying to protect that we are taking her into state custody, we're taking the shelter. But what they didn't tell you, and what the evidence will show, is that Mr. Crawford asked for a court order. You've shown me no authority to take this child. You've shown me no court order. And you'll hear him say that in the same breath as what the state just told you. What you'll also hear is that prior to that, he was in an interview room with Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis and Clay Fondra, and they were basically accusing him of doing an end around and trying to protect her brother instead of her. Coming up with anything because...
But this is the this is the crazy part. Do you remember when you saw the big lieutenant in the yellow shirt yelling at Hoot in the room saying, "What you know this is an end around just to try to keep the brother from being charged. What do you want her to keep getting molested?" That same guy in this trial said he did not think the boy was a threat to the girl. I mean, how could both be true?
Were you lying then? Are you lying now? Or are you not, in fact, a chronic and habitual liar?
And the evidence will show this. They came there but he's trying to protect her because she doesn't want anything to do with it. She didn't want to say anything or talk to anybody. And so when you look at the evidence, he asked Lieutenant Jeremy Mathis, he said, do you have a statute? Do you have a court order? Do you have any legal authority that requires her to speak to you? Members of the jury, I anticipate the state will play this step. He asked, he said, is there anything that obligates her to speak to you? And the response is no, but it be not. They then go and accuse her attorney of obstruction, of not really representing her, but doing an end around for her brother, whom Mr. Crawford had never met, who had no knowledge whether or not he was actually in town or not. And he's trying to protect this little girl. And when he looks into her eyes, he sees his own granddaughter. And he is in protection mode. The state tells you that they showed up at the CAC. They were cooperative. Even though this little girl had been going through counseling since February of that year. She had been counseling with her parents. Her parents were dealing with a teenager who had a lot of issues from long before all of this, in another state, another time, another jurisdiction. And they had been in counseling with her as a group. These are two parents actively participating in their child's health, wanting to help her. And it culminated just prior to May 6th on her having basically what appears to be a nervous breakdown or a mental crisis. And just prior to that, she discloses to them information about her biological brother. The parents take immediate action. She's there with a friend. She's hysterical. They say, don't leave with her. And eventually they acquiesce and let her leave.
Judge is checking his phone again, texting.
Now, these are parents that have been in counseling. The mother, within 15 minutes of all this happening, calls the therapist. I anticipate she'll take this stand and she will tell you what she did and what her husband did. And they did everything they could to help the child. The child makes a statement, and then she is Baker-acted that same day into the Behavioral Health Center for a several-day stay. She gets out. And on Monday morning, Tiffany Sweeney hears, it was a law enforcement officer telling her that she needed to call this number and telling her that your daughter has to go for an interview. She does whatever she can to get rid of her. But it doesn't stop there. The next day, another deputy comes. Now this deputy is a little different. She hears the... Now Tiffany Sweeney is pregnant, 7 months. She has an external defibrillator because she has a heart condition, and she has small children still in the house. She is terrified. She will tell you she was terrified. Investigator Trey Fondren tells her, I'm going to take your other children, and I'm going to take you to jail if she doesn't come do this interview. Members of the jury, what he didn't tell them? This was a voluntary interview. All of this has been reported to DCF. And when they reported it to DCF, they said, voluntary interview. But all of these folks think it's mandatory. They get scared. They're scared for their daughter. So they go and hire an attorney. Tiffany Sweeney threatens to videotape the investigator because of the way he's acting, and he immediately stops and leaves, and she slams the door and says, talk to my lawyer. The Sweeneys go to Mr. Crawford's office, and they talk to them. Mr. Crawford says, I can represent her under Marcy's law because she's a victim. And nobody's going to dispute she was a victim.
So here's what I'm going to do. Because I'm very, very serious about this family has been terrorized. They've been terrorized. And quite frankly, on the court docket, they don't do a good job at redacting, right? And the girl's an adult now, right? But I'm hearing the family name, right? And that's my fault because I missed a couple of mutes. I would have rather those be muted. It's not mandatory, but it's my own standard. Okay. I don't even want the family member's name said. Even though it's public, you could have saw it and it's in the court papers. But not, on my show, I really don't want to do that. So because I'm hearing that and I've missed a couple, I'm not going to play the rest tonight. But you're going to see everything. There could be a retrial, actually. There could be, and there is an appeal underway. This is not just going to stand. They're not just going to strip away your right to an attorney. And all of a sudden, the Children's Advocacy Center and Sheriff Ford and DCF and State Attorney Larry Bassford, because they have a bum for a judge, and this is him, by the way, they're not going to just, strip away your right for an attorney. There he is. You're not going to just throw a good man in prison or take his law license if that's all that happens. It's not going to stand. And I want to really do a good job at just at least the best I can. Like I say, it's out there. But I'm not happy with myself that I'm hearing the name when I thought I had muted it every single time it was said, but I missed a couple. So I'm not going to play the rest of it until I clean it up a little bit more better. Did a good job not showing you the juries at all, even though, they're far away and stuff like that. But still, I'm going to do my best to really protect the integrity of this courtroom since the judge soiled it so bad. And I'm sorry that this is halfway through and Don Pumphrey is unbelievable. You'll see. Whoo, is he good, boy, especially when he questions, when the Cape Fear investigator and Lieutenant Jerry Mathis, first of all, no, we didn't ever have any fear that she was in danger. What the hell were you doing? Chasing her around all the time. Putting her in state custody, arresting her attorney, scaring the crap out of everybody. All right, so I'm just going to stop it right here, okay? Will you forgive me and will you help me? If you haven't, I just noticed this. I never say this, but in order for this to be seen more, it really helps if you hit like, if you comment, if you tag people, because all the local news outlets are in on this, and they're happy to screw over their own community, the very place where the right to an attorney was born. You'll see all of them say, elect me. I'm from the place where we got the right to an attorney in 1963, right here in Panama City. That's the 14th Judicial Circuit. That's the courtroom. This is what they brag about while they violate it with the help of the propagandists who lie to you. It is a journalist's job to cover when the authorities are stripping attorneys and all this stuff that we're seeing. The extent to which there's public corruption is the extent to which there's no coverage of it. So if you want people to hear the truth, I'm going to tell it to you and I'm going to show it to you. And you can do your part too. For one thing, if you have the means, I'll do the grunt work. I'll put my neck on the line. It's very dangerous. They've already surrounded my home. You know that. Message received, Sheriff. But if you have the means, Hoot Crawford and the right to an attorney could really use some help. I don't have the link, I don't think, but if you search GoFundMe and Hoot Crawford, that's the GoFundMe page. It's going to take about $75,000 for him to appeal. He doesn't have it. Hoot Crawford's the kind of defense attorney that defended a lot of people for nothing. This hasn't done a lot for his health either, by the way, which already has a few issues. He doesn't have it. It's not like it's a wealthy attorney. Leave it to him. He'll save the day. He's defended people his whole life. He needs defending now, not because we like him, and we do, but because this is probably the most far-reaching, dangerous, craziest thing that anybody's ever seen in a courtroom around here. And I'm talking to a lot of people that are in courtrooms. This is big. Please do your part. Just get the word out. Help me get the word out. If you've got the means, please put some money in there for Hoot Crawford. GoFundMe, Hoot Crawford, and you'll find it. And to those of you who help me get the word out, like the Unknown Patriot, you know how grateful I am. Like those of you who throw a tip in the tip jar as little as $5 a month at patreon.com. Man, crowdfunding is the only way that I squeak by. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. It's anonymous, and you can quit anytime, and it's easy. All right. So much more. This is the place to be. This is going to be where it's at. And this is where you're going to see it all.